Look at these scorch marks. Look at that. Look how cool that looks. You can see where the rocket has blown out the back here and it's burnt all the Earth. Welcome back to another episode of Aussie Google Earth Explorer. Today's episode, we're doing something a little bit different. We're doing spaceports in the United States. So before I made this episode, I didn't even know what a spaceport was. I thought, you have airports, you have ports where boats go, but if you launch a space shuttle or a rocket or whatever, it's called a spaceport. The place that you launch it is called a spaceport, which it totally makes sense, but I've just never really thought about it. So we're going to do a couple of different ones. We're going to check out SpaceX down here. This is the SpaceX Center in Texas. We're going to go over, we're going to look at Cape Canaveral and Kennedy Space Center in Florida. That's on the East Coast. We're going to check out all the way over here, Blue Origin. This is their spaceport also in Texas. And then we're going to finish off, we're going to go to Vandenberg Space Force Center in California. So these kind of cover a big range of why you would be launching things to space. So you'd be doing it for a multitude of reasons. It could be satellite, it could be personnel like the Apollo missions, or it could just be, I guess, just to go up and have a look really, like we've been doing space tourism. Also military as well. That's another reason why a satellite's in military. But let's kick things off here. Let's go to, this is the SpaceX Center, okay, down here in the Gulf of Mexico or the Gulf of America, whoever you want to hear, whatever you want to believe. And this is it, right? It's right down the bottom. This is Elon Musk's little zone down here. This is what he's built. It's right on the border between Mexico and the United States. And it's right here. So this is it. This is the SpaceX Center. And you can set, none of this is in 3D because, it's classified sort of spot. You can't look at this in 3D, but we can gauge a fair bit just by looking at the 2D here. You can see here that these main sort of towers, these would be used actually to house rockets. And you can see on the left-hand side here, these are either some boosters or maybe these are like fuel sort of stations, but they look to me like these could be boosters. They kind of look like sort of rockets to me. But over here, this is the main sort of assembly area. You could see that you could put something in this large structure here, like a rocket or a booster or something like that. And they do a lot of test and development at this center. So while I was doing some research for this show, a pretty big difference between what SpaceX is doing and what, say, NASA is doing is that SpaceX really it's like trial and error a lot of the time. They have a lot of launches and they often have failures, right? They blow up a lot of things, but they just get it done at a rapid speed. So they're not really held back by government funding or whatever. It's just go 100 miles an hour and see, how quickly we can develop our rockets. But this SpaceX Center here, this is the main sort of base. And then on the right-hand side, you come over here, you can see that this is a launch site. So this is quite clearly a site here where they've been launching some SpaceX rockets from. You can see that this is that main sort of system that holds the rocket up here. And then you have all the fuel. This would be all the fuel that they're pumping in. I don't know what sort of fuel a rocket fuel, I guess you could call it, runs on. These are all the sort of containers that house all that fuel. And a lot of workers here. You can see a lot of cars banked up here, people just working, doing their day job at the SpaceX Center. But it's a pretty cool little site. This is a rapidly expanding site. This is one of the most rapidly expanding sites probably in the world. A lot of money and resources has been spent on this site, and it's quite incredible what they've done. So a little bit about SpaceX. Obviously, it's Elon Musk's, space program, and a lot of this stuff is about, sending men to Mars. We want to send man to Mars. I don't know what we're going to do when we're there. All right, I don't know what we can do with there. Maybe like build a couple of horse racing tracks, poker machines. I don't know. We're probably going to do the exact same thing we're doing here. It's just going to be the dirt's a bit more red. You know what I mean? The dirt's a bit more red. Maybe we get up to Mars and we just build a few Maccas and we get back to basics. Right? We want to get back to basics here. Let's get the housing market pumping. Let's get to Mars and let's get the rental market absolutely cranking so we can't even afford Mars rental. That's what we'll be doing up there in Mars. Hey, just a little couple facts about SpaceX here, right? So what have they been doing here in SpaceX? They've been launching these heavy rocket systems. Okay, SN8, SN9, SN10. These are big boys, these prototypes. And they launch these. And if you haven't seen the videos of them landing them, it's the sickest thing, dude. They land these things and reuse them. So if you just think, right, what we used to do, we used to come over here, we used to launch these boosters, and then they'd fly up in the air, and then they'd just drop into the ocean. They would just drop into the ocean, and you'd salvage them somewhat, but they'd be pretty unusable. And a big thing that they're doing at SpaceX is they're reusing their boosters, right? They're reusing them. They come back down, they land these things, and then they kick them off again. So they save a lot of money. They don't have to build them again, which is pretty sick. It's actually really, really cool, right? It's a reusable rocket system. That's what it's called, right? The reusable rocket system. But this is it. This is the SpaceX Starbase, they call it, in the Gulf of Mexico. Let's get that correct. It's called the Gulf of Mexico. There's no other name for it, as far as I know. It's the Gulf of Mexico, ladies and gentlemen, the Gulf of Mexico. But this is it, the SpaceX Starbase. Let's have a little look around here, see if we can see anything else. And look, people are living here. People are living out here on the Starbase. And they've got their little houses, you know, they're going to work. It's a short commute to work, I'll tell you that much, at the SpaceX Starbase. I could probably get up here at about, 8:55 a.m., get up, go to the toilet, bang, I hop in my little car, good 200 meters to site, boos, I'm here, I'm sending man to Mars in all of 5 minutes. All right, and that's not bad. And this looks like a bigger house. I wonder if this is Elon's. This might be Elon's house on base. Yeah, this might be Elon's house on base here, where they're doing, you know, after work knockoff drinks, perhaps. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like Elon Musk wouldn't really be a fun guy to have a couple beers with. He seems like he takes too, you know, he's just a little bit too. I don't think he can just chop it up with the lads. I don't think he can just chop it up. I've seen some interviews with the guy. He kind of, I'm a little bit, you know, Elon, right? He's a bit too much for me, to be completely honest. But hey, this is the Starbase, and there's people living here. There's people living here on the Starbase. I wonder what a little two better here would run me. You know, I'm trying to invest in investment property. The property market's hot, ladies and gentlemen. What would a little two better on the SpaceX Starbase run you? 500K, 600K, you know? Something to think about. But that's it, SpaceX Starbase. Let's zoom out here and let's get our bearings. Let's see where we are. So we're in the Gulf of Mexico, ladies and gentlemen, the Gulf of Mexico. It's not got another name. It's called the Gulf of Mexico. You know what I'm saying? And let's go over here to Florida. Okay, let's cruise over here to Florida. And let's go to the Kennedy Space Center and Cape Canaveral. Now, they're actually right next to each other, okay? So the Kennedy Space Center and Cape Canaveral are right next door to each other. And let's just zoom in on them here, and you can see we're on the east coast of America. We're in Florida, okay? And the difference here between the Kennedy Space Center and Cape Canaveral is the Kennedy Space Center, this is NASA, okay? This is NASA. Now, NASA has launched, the Apollo missions. It's the ones that everyone knows. It's the ones where we sent man to moon. It's this one up here. Now let's just zoom in on it here. This is the Kennedy Space Center. And you can see it has this really large central building here. Again, we can't look at this in 3D, unfortunately. But actually, if we just zoom down here a little bit, some of these buildings are available in 3D. But the main part here is not, and it kind of looks a bit strange having a bit of 3D and a bit of 2D. But look, it's a little bit of an insight into what they're doing. But this main center here at the Kennedy Space Center, that's where the rockets would be, or the space shuttles would be standing up straight, right? You can't work on these things laying down. You work on them standing up. So it's essentially like a big house. It's a big rocket house. It's a big rocket house, kind of like in Wallace and Gromit. I don't know if you guys remember Wallace and Gromit when they went to the moon. I believe it was the first one. The first Wallace and Gromit is the one where they went to the moon and they built that rocket in their basement. I believe Wallace and Gromit. And mate, as a kid, I don't know about anyone else, but as a kid, Wallace and Gromit freaked me out like nothing else. I've never been more scared in my life than watching Wallace and Gromit, especially this one about when they go to the moon and the moon's all cheese. Oh, that was the most scary thing. I've never been more. I've seen horror movies. I'm in my early 30s. I've seen horror movies now, and it pales in comparison to the feelings that I had when I watched Wallace and Gromit as a child. Holy dooly, insane sort of stuff. Especially that. Remember that Wallace and Gromit with the wrong trousers? Oh, and that penguin. Oh man, that was freaky. I hated that. Anyway, sidetrack. Here we go. This is the NASA shuttle landing facility. So when you think about going to space, right? When you think about going to space, you've got the rocket and then you've got the actual shuttle. So the rocket's detached from the shuttle. And then they actually land them like they would land a plane. So they land the shuttles here and they come down just as a plane would. You know, these shuttles have like little wings on them and they land them just like a plane. And I can't believe it, but there's literally one right here for us to see. How sick is this? This is a space shuttle right here. This is sick. I had no idea we were going to see this, and this is what they look like. So you can imagine, this is the little wings here, and it's landing like a plane, and you can see there's little boosters in the back here, and that's crazy that they've just got this like that. Maybe that's on display, like a little bit of a tourist thing. You can come and see it. But that's crazy, man. This is a little, air traffic control tower. I don't know why they've got this here. What, you're going to land in a couple at the same time, are you? What, they're flying around waiting to clear in a holding pattern? I've just come bloody back from the moon, mate. Don't make me wait. Don't make me wait. I got Jetstar flight coming in on the first runway. Mate, I'm coming from another planet, okay? I'm coming from another planet. I feel like I need to land first. Far out. Anyway, this is the NASA shuttle landing facility. And let's just go have a little look over here. And you can see these are sites where they've launched other missions. And you've got these central sort of pylons here. These connect to the rocket. And these come across and they move in and they hold up the main rocket there. And you've got all these different little things around here. Like these would be little fuel stations where they keep the fuel and like other things like that. And it's pretty interesting. All these areas are super interesting. Space flight is one of the most incredible things. I think we've been doing a lot more of it lately. Here's another one over here. This is another one of those launch facilities, and you can see that they have all this sort of infrastructure to launch the rockets. And this looks awesome from Google Earth. This looks so cool. And again, I didn't even know that there was so many of these places. In my mind, it was like Cape Canaveral, that's it. But there's the Kennedy Space Center, and then if we zoom out a little bit here, like I was saying before, this is Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Great name, Space Force Station. And the difference is, like I said, this is not NASA, right? This is military, or this is sort of commercial and military. So at Cape Canaveral, they launch, Blue Origin launches here, SpaceX launches here. Other sort of companies that are launching satellites, or they'll launch from Cape Canaveral as well. So this is as I understand, this is a busier facility, right? And you can see that the amount of launch sites at Cape Canaveral, they have a lot more of them. There's a lot more of these little launch sites. We got 2, 3, 4. These all look like little sites to me where they have, or they might launch in the future. These like little things here at Cape Canaveral. Yeah, look at all more here. There's all these little spots here where they can launch. I mean, because you don't need to launch huge rockets all the time. If you're just sending up a satellite, and mate, there is a lot. I don't know the stats off the top of my head, but there is so many satellites flying around right now. They've got to launch them from somewhere. Obviously, China's doing a lot of it. Russia's launching satellites. There's European satellites. So, but a lot of every telecommunication company is using some sort of satellite. Every tech company, everyone's got satellites up there, and they've got to launch them from somewhere. So I think Cape Canaveral is one of these main places. And let's just zoom in here. We get a little bit more 3D. And look, these it looks like really this is all private industry, or it's all, maybe these are like spaces to hire. And if you have a business and you're trying to launch a satellite, or you're trying to launch something smaller, you can get a little spot. Because this is what it really, I could be wrong. I'm kind of making this up, but it looks like there's a lot of different little areas, and all these areas can be utilized for different projects. That's what it kind of looks like. And they've got a little tennis courts over here. Actually, it's kind of interesting. They've got a little, where was that? Yeah, little tennis courts here at Cape Canaveral. I guess it's a active base. So this is that people would, work out here every day. Is a full time of staff and stuff. So Cape Canaveral base, and it's actually a town as well. Just over here is Cape Canaveral. There's some cool stuff I actually wanted to talk about here about space flight, specifically about how we actually get to space. When I was doing the show notes for this episode, I discovered a couple of things that I did not know, and I want to share them with you because maybe you guys don't know them either. So when you actually launch, let's pretend we're launching a rocket here from the Kennedy Space Center over here, right? Let's pretend we're launching something from here. We don't launch straight up. You kind of launch up for a little bit and then you kind of go to the side. And you could launch straight up. You could go dead straight and you could just blast yourself into outer space. But really, that's not what you want to do. You want to get into the Earth's orbit. That's the key thing here. You want to get into the Earth's orbit. And the reason why you want to do that is because you don't want to just go up to outer space and then get pulled back down by Earth's gravity. You want to be going fast enough, so you want to get your escape velocity. You want to be going fast enough that you actually enter into the orbit, and your speed is going to carry you around the Earth. Okay, it's going to carry you around the Earth without falling back down due to the pull of Earth's gravity. So that's why when you take off from a base like this, you don't go straight up. But another thing is really interesting about why you take off from these bases. Now, if we just zoom out here, all these bases here are near the equator, right? So Kennedy Space Center, Cape Canaveral, it's all near the equator. Over here, where we were looking at before, SpaceX base, it's as far down as you can get in the United States. It's close enough to the equator. And the reason is because the equator is actually spinning faster than anywhere else on Earth. Okay, it's spinning about 1,670 miles faster than other parts of the Earth because it's the widest, right? So for it to do one revolution, it actually has to spin faster than other parts. And when you think about we're still right now, well, we're not still, we're all spinning. So if I launch a space shuttle from Cape Canaveral, I will be instantly given some more velocity as soon as I take off, which means the amount of fuel that I need to use will be less because I'm trying to reach an escape velocity to get out of the atmosphere. So that's why we launch from close to the equator, which I didn't know this. This is actually that's a pretty interesting little fact there. But this is Cape Canaveral. And guys, Cape Canaveral, this is a really, really sad story, but one of the most fascinating things you can watch on YouTube is the Challenger space shuttle launch, which happened here at Cape Canaveral in 1986. And unfortunately, it blew up just after it took off, and they filmed the whole thing. So let's just pretend where it happened right here. The Challenger shuttle, pretend like it just took off from right here, and all the families are watching back here on these little grandstands, right? And they, in real time, saw the shuttle take off, fly over the ocean, and then explode, and everyone on board was killed. And they watched it happen in real time. And you can watch the footage on YouTube and see the expressions of the families' faces when they realize that their loved ones will never come back. It is one of the most harrowing pieces of footage you can ever see, and it happened right here at Cape Canaveral. It's incredible. If you got the stomach for it, mate, look it up on YouTube. It is unbelievable. The Challenger disaster. And let's leave it there for Cape Canaveral, okay? So we saw Cape Canaveral and we saw the Kennedy Space Center to the north. And this is NASA, okay, this is government, all right? This is military and also private use like Elon Musk's SpaceX. All right, let's zoom out a little bit here and let's get our bearings. So we were looking at Cape Canaveral and Kennedy Space Center, and now we're going to look at something really, really new here. And this is, I think, one of the most interesting ones from Google Earth. This is the coolest one I could find, right? And it's the Blue Origin Center. This is the Blue Origin. This is Jeff Bezos. This is his company, his space company. And I had to really, really, really look for this. These coordinates were pretty hidden. If you Google Earth this, nothing came up, and I had to find the actual manual coordinates and find this myself. So this is the Blue Origin facility, and it's pretty small, but you can see, if we zoom in here, you can see that they have this same sort of central development center where they could be building stuff. And we know this is Blue Origin because if we zoom in here, you can see, and actually that's a bad example. Let's just find another one. You can see the little feather. The feather is the Blue Origin. Here we go. Look at this. We know that this is the Blue Origin facility because we can zoom in and see that it's got the feather on the launch sites there, and that's the symbol of the company. And interesting little thing about the Blue Origin site. Okay, this is a relatively new site here, and this is in Texas, by the way. We're in Texas, and this is a privately held land owned by the company. And this is a really, really cool part because if we go out over here, right, we can see this is a rocket booster testing facility at Blue Origin, and you can see here this is the testing happening here, and you can see the Earth scorch marks. Look at these scorch marks. Look at that. Look how cool that looks. You can see where the rocket has blown out the back here, and it's burnt all the Earth. And all this, this is these tanks would be holding all the fuel and the propellant, and you can really see where they would actually hold in these bracket systems. They would hold the engines, right, for the boosters, and that's just a really, really cool thing that I noticed on the Blue Origin space center out here. We're in Texas, United States. This is Jeff Bezos's little space exploration center. And it's pretty small, right? It's pretty small. A lot of this stuff, Blue Origin, they're looking into doing tourism in space, right? Sending people up there, wealthy people up there, to go to space. I think actually Katy Perry wants to go to space on one of these Blue Origin flights. I think I read in the news. Katy Perry, I Kissed a Girl, teenage dream kind of Katy Perry. She wants to get strapped into a rocket and blasted into outer space with Jeff Bezos. Which, going into space with old Jeffy boy doesn't sound the worst. I'd rather go into space with Jeff Bezos than I would with Elon Musk. I feel like the conversation would just flow a little bit. And actually, you know what, on Jeff Bezos, the man's had a glow up like no one else. He's jacked. He's ripped. He's jacked. And if you think about all these billionaires, right? Think about Bezos, you think about Zuck, they've all had glow ups. They're all looking better, they're tanned, they've been hitting the gym, whatever. They probably got Botox coming out their ears. They wear better clothes. They're rich boys. And then you think about Elon. Man, he's gone the other way, dude. He looks like more of a freak now than he's ever done in his life, old Elon Musk. The guy's he's going opposite. He's going opposite. He needs to have a bit of a style lesson from the other fellas, I think, because he's looking full freak mode at the moment, big fella Elon. Things aren't looking too bright for the big guy. Anyway, but this is it. You can see they've got some helipads here. They've got some helipads here at Blue Origin. And it's so remote, dude. Look at how remote this is. And it's kind of secretive vibes. It's kind of secretive. You don't even know how you'd bloody get in here. Like, what's the nearest town? Van Horn down here. So if you lived in Van Horn, you'd have to travel north from Van Horn up this road and through all these little canyons and stuff. And you get up here to the Blue Origin facility up here. This is Jeff Bezos' facility. All right, let's zoom out here. We're going to look at one more. We're going to go to the west coast of the United States. We're going to the west coast, and we're checking out the Vandenberg Space Force Center. This is the Vandenberg Space Force Center. And this is a little bit different again, because I think primarily what this is this is I think this is more military. Right? This is like a missile testing facility during the Cold War. There's a lot of reconnaissance satellites that are launched over here. There's a lot of different things, and they need to have, when they launch, or on the other side of America, right? So we're launching at a different angle. But what's an interesting thing about why you would have your Space Force base near the ocean is because you always need to drop your boosters into the sea, right? Once you're done with them, you can't have a space center in the middle of the country, because if it hit the ground, they would explode. So that's why you see all these. We got Vandenberg, we got Blue Origin. Blue Origin's actually in the middle here because I don't think they're reusing their boosters. Maybe they're sort of thinking about space flight in a different way, more like a plane, right? They're not really doing it the classic way. But then you've got SpaceX is on water, and then you've got Kennedy and Cape Canaveral, they're on water as well. So they're sort of using that. That's more old school. blast and use the ocean as a bit of a landing facility. But the Vandenberg Space Force Center here, it's a little bit more of a military base, I think. It's a little bit more of a military base. This is a bit more national security happens here. And you can see that the center here, this is really set up like like a military base, right? This is all housing for people that live on base. They've got their facilities here. They've got sports facilities. And they're really, this is national security. This is satellites, tracking, things like that. But let's just zoom out and have a look at their launch facilities and see what we can see. And they're all over the coast here, like they were at Kennedy and Cape Canaveral. And you can see them dotted along here. There's these little zones where they've launched all that they're going to launch. There's one there. Where else? There's a couple more around here. They're sort of dotted around, right? They're dotted around. But it's definitely a smaller operation. It's definitely a smaller operation at Vandenberg facilities comparative to some of the other ones. And I don't even know if these are, this kind of looks like they're building something here maybe. There's that sort of like this taller sort of tower, sort of shed. They're sheds, like very expensive sheds. Like, let's be honest, this is a very expensive shed, right? Very expensive shed. And the tools, mate, the tools would be so expensive, dude. The tools would be so expensive. And I love space. I love thinking about space. I don't like thinking about too much, because I feel like if I think about space too much, it just freaks me out. And that's a me thing. That's probably a me problem. But look, I can't be alone in that, because if we just take SpaceX here, for example, right? Let's just zoom in here and let's just finish the video on a cool little fact here, right? This is Elon Musk's Space Center. And if we look over here on the right-hand side, right? Here's a beach. If we took this beach and we looked at every single piece of sand on this beach, every little bit of sand on this beach, we counted them up, every grain of sand. And then we looked at this ocean and we drained the water from this ocean and we counted up every little bit of sand underneath this sea. And then we went to every single desert on Earth and we counted every single grain of sand there. So every single grain of sand on our planet Earth, the amount of sand that we have just counted, it wouldn't even equal the amount of stars in our universe. It would not even equal the amount of stars in our universe. And when I think about stuff like that, the enormity of space and the reality that if we're actually just on Earth and there's an ever-expanding universe happening around us, it's so insane and unfathomably large that I think humans, we kind of switch off and we just go back to our day-to-day lives. Like, if you think about it too much, the enormity of it sort of overwhelms you, right? And then you're just like, I'm watching the football. I'm going to go to the pub and have some beers with my mates, because it's just too much. Because if humans really, really cared about space, we would spend every single waking minute of our lives. We would pull every single resource, every government, every bit of money that we have. We would obsess and only think about going to space. Because really, there's nothing else more important than figuring out what the actual F is going on out here, right? What is this? If we're really floating through Earth, through space, like, look at this, right? If this is really happening, why aren't we spending every single waking minute of our lives trying to figure out what is going on out there in the galaxy and in the universe? Because we can't, mate. It's just too much for our little brains to handle. It gets too much for you. You just go, I'm going to watch reruns of Friends. I'm just going to watch reruns of Friends, and I'm going to eat pizza, and I'm going to go to the football, and I'm going to hang out with my friends, because it's just way too much for my little baby brain to handle. Anyway, that's how I feel about it, right? That's how I feel about it. It's just too much for my little brain to handle. But hey, that is American Spaceports. And I loved making this episode. We're going to do another episode about spaceports in other countries. We're going to check out China. We're going to look at Russia, because those guys, big dogs in the space race back in the day. And actually, they've been stepping up their technology in the last couple of years as well. So we're going to check that out. But hey, thanks for watching. And until the next video, see ya.